All right, welcome into hour two. Let's talk some Elgton Jenkins now. Moving along, we were way behind schedule. Way behind schedule. Um, let's talk about what happened with Elgton today. So it was reported earlier today that the Packers center Elgton Jenkins reported to mandatory minicamp. I heard Wildy talk about it. There was a couple other people that tweeted about it as well. It sounds like it was pretty much confirmed. So starting center Elgton Jenkins is reported for his this week's mandatory minicamp. Early rumors are that Jenkins plans on attending but not participating in the minicamp until a resolution is reached on his current contract. Although it's not perfect news, it is a step in the right direction for Matt LaFleur to have his most experienced offensive lineman in-house, where hopefully negotiations will now ramp up. I think that this is acting in good faith. Brian Balaga talked about this the other night or the other day on Wildy and Tausch. They said if Elgton Jenkins came to you, Brian Balaga, and asked you for advice, what advice would you give him? He'd say, show up. He said, show up to camp in good faith, but do not participate in anything, because if you get hurt, you are screwing yourself. So withhold your services while in camp to let them know, hey, look, I'm here. I'm serious. I want to do this, but you got to give me some more guaranteed money. So when you look at Elgton Jenkins's current contract, right? His current contract, he is in 2025, 30 years old, right? This year here, his cap hit is $17.6 million. The dead cap is $9.6 million attached. So you can move on from him and free up roughly $8 million if you wanted to. We know we don't want to. Now, why is he wanting more money? You'll notice the dead cap shrinks to $4.8 million next year. All right. So obviously that's the Packers can free up $20 million if they cut bait next year. He will be 31 years old next year. So it kind of feels like Goody is looking at this like, hey, let's move Elgton to center. He played center in college. This is probably our best move to kind of just a little stopgap in that situation there. And then if next year we get a better option at center, then you just cut bait. You cut bait, you free up $20 million. Elgton knows that. And Elgton knows, okay, if they kick me over to center, my value goes down now in terms of average annual value across the league playing center as opposed to guard. Guard typically get paid a little bit more. You guys know how I feel about that. I think center is more important than guard. That's just me personally. But if that number is going to go down, he's trying to protect himself going, look, if I'm going to move to a position that is going to pay less on average, then give me a little more guaranteed money. So we've been pretty vocal about this, that I think they should try to guarantee a little bit more money. Maybe meet them in the middle and say, hey, look, you know what, Elgton, let's guarantee your cap hits $17.6 million this year. Let's tack on another $5 million in guarantee. Now, Elgton may not like that. Elgton may say, no. I want a 3-year deal. And if that's the case, then you just got to play hardball, let him sit out through offseason. He'll report after training camp, and he'll be on your roster for 1 year. I think he's professional enough. Elton's been one of those dudes that he would play the year out and not try to cause a stink, but he's going to withhold his services. In the meantime, you got to get Jacob Monk reps. You got to get Sean Ryan reps, and that's what's going to happen in camp. And to me, that's the best way that you can put a little more pressure on Elgton Jenkins by letting these other guys get the reps while he's in-house so he doesn't get fined. I want to say earlier today, I think it was Elgton Jenkins or it was Brian Balaga that said it would be $50,000 a day if they miss. That sounded a little steep to me. And maybe they were talking about training camp as opposed to mandatory minicamp. But I think there is a fine attached to mandatory minicamp. So maybe it is $50,000 a year. So obviously he's not going to miss out on that money in that regard. So, all right. That's pretty much what's going on with Elgton Jenkins' contract at the moment. As Mandy is home, she brung all kinds of goodies. So she was up in Rockford, Illinois. Evidently, there's a big Packer presence in Rockford, Illinois. She got me all kinds of stuff. Look at this little vintage Green Bay Packers stuff. I'm going to show these on the air. This is going to be fun. Let's do it. So she found a bunch of old yearbooks. Check this out, guys. $5. 1992 yearbook, Green Bay Packers. All right. Pretty cool how they had it sketched out there, too. 1997 yearbook. These are in good shape, too. That's awesome. This one's probably going to be my favorite. 1993 yearbook, mint condition. Brett Favre on the cover. Pretty cool. And she got a Super Bowl year 96. All right, got that one. We got a 94 with Reggie on the front. This is really cool. We got a Press Gazette Super Bowl year, Titletown. That's pretty sweet. Yeah, you hit the jackpot, girl. And then another special here, the Super Bowl champion one. So pretty darn sweet. That's awesome. Oh, yeah. And then, of course, I don't think these are still good, but look at the Wheaties box from the Super Bowl year. What are these people doing in Rockford selling this stuff for $10? What is going on? And then another cool one. Lombardi and Mike Holmgren on the cover of the Wheaties box. Pretty sweet. That's awesome. Low fat, by the way. She said, yeah, we got to get the low fat. So, thank you, baby. That's awesome. Absolutely awesome. I'm sure they appreciate that on the live on the air. That's good podcasting right there. But anyway, so with Elgton Jenkins, we'll have to edit all that out, obviously. So with Elgton Jenkins, there we go. Ron Sample. Thank you so much, Ron. He said it's $16,953 for the first day, $33,908 for the second day, and then $50,855 for the third day, totaling $101,716 for all 3 days. Wow, that's interesting. So when they said the $50,000, they were probably thinking about the max there on the third day when Belaga was talking about that. So nonetheless, he's not going to miss out on that money. He's already missed out on, I think, $500,000 off-season workout bonus there. So that money starts to add up. I don't care how much money you're making, you know. So yeah. There you go. There's the Elgton Jenkins update. I think it's good news. I think they're going to be a step closer to a resolution here. Part of me worries that Goody's going to play too hard a ball, right? And tick him off. And then, you know, maybe he just says, hey, look, I'm holding out till week one, and they end up trading him out. I want to see what this offensive line can do with Elgton at center. But then again, man, he may withhold services and then come in week one, and that's just how this thing plays out. We'll see. We'll see how it all shakes out there. But there's your Elgton Jenkins update. Also, just threw that in there for everybody on the Patreon group. Again, just a reminder: the Packers cap space being $45 million here in 2024. You've got room, man. You got room to make this happen. That's why I'm kind of like, if he's asking for a 3-year extension, I can't do that, you know. But if he's saying, hey, sweeten the pot a little bit, and that's what Belaga seems to think the situation is, then do it, right? I think you sweeten the pot a little bit and and make that happen. Hey, fam, in the chat, we should have traded Jair for any extra kidney for Musgrave. Man, that's still wild that Musgrave played through that internal bleeding. So, all right. There is your Elgton Jenkins update. Now let's talk about NFC North. Andy Monday asked a great question over in our Patreon group, and I haven't even mentioned this. People are going, hey, how do I join the Patreon group? Here is how you join. Just go to patreon.com/PackerFan Total Access, or scan the QR code in the upper right. Be a member of the $3 tier, get you access to everything. And I'm trying to do things a little bit different with the questions. I don't know how much time I'll have to be able to do it more consistently, but just trying to incorporate people's questions into a quick write-up. That way we can do screen grabs and provide all the information here. So again, patreon.com/PackerFan Total Access. Andy Monday with a great question here says, what are some key factors to the Packers turning their 1-5 divisional record from 2024 into a 5-1 mark in 2025? Obviously, it's not that cut and dry. You know, it's not just like, well, we fix this one thing. We're going to, because every year's different. Different problems are going to pop up next year, just like things are going to go better next year in certain aspects as well. So what I did was I went through and said, all right, let's grab all of these games real quick, right? And kind of see what happened in them. I think I got them all. Hopefully I did. I think I got all 6. I believe I did. Maybe I might have missed out on 1 or 2. But anyway, week 4 versus the Vikings. We lost that game 31-29. You can see the Packers came roaring. I felt really good about this, the way that game ended and how they battled back, scoring 22 points in the fourth quarter, and the defense kind of buckling down and holding the Vikings to only 3 points in the second half. Thought they really rebounded well. So you guys know what I'm going to look at first is turnover differential. We lost the turnover battle. We lost it 4-3. We threw 3 interceptions in that game. We fumbled. We lost 1 fumble as well. They threw 1 interception, and they lost 2 fumbles. So when you lose the turnover differential by 1, got like a 70% chance of losing, whatever it is. It's in the 70 percentile. So to me, that's the story of that game. Now, let's go back to the coverage talk, right? Like, okay, was the coverage a problem last year? Passing wise, we outpassed the Minnesota Vikings 379 yards to 254. Now, it's worth noting when a team is leading by that much, as they were leading 28-7 going into halftime, they're going to start to run the ball a little bit more and pull away from the pass. But nonetheless, holding them to 254 yards passing, I don't think that's a horrible day at the office. Now, he was very efficient, 20 of 28, but you were still able to take the ball away once there with an interception. I think, if I remember correctly, that was an Xavier McKinney interception on the left hash, if I remember. I want to say they were playing a cover 2, and he broke all the way across the – no. Remember, they ran Aaron Jones – I don't know how I remember this. Aaron Jones out on a wheel route, and Xavier McKinney was supposed to be playing a hook curl, and he just broke completely off his zone and went and got the damn football. It was absolutely awesome. So, again, what do we got to do? Back to Andy Monday's original question, what do we got to do to go 5-1 as opposed to 1-5? You got to clean up these interceptions here, man. You got to. You can't throw 3 interceptions in a game, expect to win. So there is your week 4 answer against the Vikings. Moving on to week 9 against the Lions. Against the Lions, you end up losing 24-14. You guys know it was this monsoon. It was raining at Lambeau Field, so that played a big role in obviously how you were going to call the game. Once again, let's go to the turnovers. And you lost the turnover batter 1-0. You guys remember that interception actually got flipped into a touchdown. It was a pick 6 where Jordan scrambled right. Some were saying it was a blown block. Others were trying to blame Tucker Kraft on the play. Josh Jacobs wasn't even supposed to be in the pass route. He helped block and then snuck out of the backfield. Jordan tried to hit him, and I'm trying to think of who it was that picked it off and took it for 6. Was it Kirby Joseph? Am I thinking right? But anyway, you lost the turnover differential 1-0 in that game, and obviously you get that defensive touchdown there, that one touchdown. Now you end up losing by 10, so let's look for another factor in. That's a 7-point swing. So what do you think was the biggest determining factor in why the Packers lost that other 3 points, I guess you could say? And when you look at the box score here, or the team statistics, we held their passing game in check. 137, we had 273. Now, their yards per pass attempt was 6. Ours was a full yard better at 7. The big thing I remember in that game was it felt like the Lions were just like, you know what? We're just going to kind of lay back and not lose this ball game. They played very conservative, and it ended up winning them the ball game because of that pick 6. That's a hard thing to come back from. Look at the penalties, too. Penalties, we had 10 penalties for 67 yards. They only had 5 for 51. 16 yards ain't a huge difference, but that 10 penalties, my gosh. If I remember correctly, too, when we broke this down, I think me and Jacob did this breakdown. Maybe Tim was in here, too. I want to say Josh Jacobs had a touchdown run late in that game as well, or maybe it was before halftime, and it got called back for a hold. So there you go. If I had to break that game down, I would say the pick 6 was huge. And then, obviously, the penalties were the other factor there. So, to answer Andy Monday's question here on Week 9 versus the Lions at Lambeau Field in the rain, turnovers, mental mistakes, penalties, right? That's the big thing. And again, just as we said, the team's going to be a little bit older this year. You end up cutting loose of Jair, who was 28 years old, so that's going to bring the average age back down. I don't, obviously that's not going to hurt you with the penalties on the offensive side of the ball, I wouldn't imagine. So I don't think it's going to trickle over or anything like that. But all right, next, week 11 at the Bears. You won that game by 1 point. And I just wanted to point that out real quick. And I definitely didn't grab all the games, but I grabbed a handful of them here. Why did we win that game, right? It looks like we actually turned the ball over. We lost the turnover differential in that game. We threw another interception, or else that game wouldn't have been as close as it was. What did the Bears do well here? Let's look at the penalties. Where are the penalties at? They were penalized way more. So even though this was a win for the Packers, and I just wanted to mix it up a little bit, I don't really know what kept them in that game. Was it third down efficiency? They were 9 of 16 on third down. Yep, there you go. We were 1 of 5 on third down. We were 0 for 1 on fourth down. There it is. There's the number you're looking for. They were 3 for 3 on fourth down conversions. So what do you do about that? You try to stop a fourth down play the same as you try to stop a first down, a second down, a third down play, right? Great call there, Deb Fish. If it's true, time of possession, they had the ball for 13 minutes longer than we did, and that goes hand in hand with that fourth down efficiency, right? So that probably plays the biggest role in that game. So there you go. Week 14 at the Lions. The Lions obviously beat us by 3 points in this game here. And when we go back and look at it, let's start with the turnovers. The turnover differential was 1-1. We lost a fumble, I think. Yeah, we lost a fumble, and they threw an interception. So your turnover differential was 1-1. But once again, look at the time of possession. They had the ball for, once again, 13 more minutes than we did. So that's a big determining factor there. Let's look at the penalties real quick. Penalties were pretty much spot on. They were tied. 7 for 59 for us, 7 for 56 for them. So it was all about time of possession. Now, let's go to typically it's the fourth down is what controls the time of possession, third down conversion, fourth down efficiency. We were 1 of 5 on third down. We did not go for it on fourth down. They were 7 of 15 on third down, guys. 7 of 15, and they were 4 of 5 on fourth down. So you're seeing that fourth down defense is really what's hurting us, right? Ed Madden said, this is the game the Jacobs touchdown was called back. Got it. Appreciate that. So there you go. So the tell of the tape here is turnover differential was 1-1, right? You're good there. The time of possession, 13 minutes, and it was a direct reflection of that fourth down efficiency for the Lions, which we know that's what they live and die by it. And, boy, they lived by it that day. So this is probably something that they want to put a little extra emphasis on, they being Matt LaFleur and his coaching staff, is third down and fourth down efficiency. Go back and self-scout. What did we call on those plays? What allowed them to put themselves in a position where they could go for it on fourth down? What did they convert on third down and try to tighten up a little bit? Now, we know, obviously, their OC is now in Chicago as the head coach. So going to be a little bit different this time around. We'll see how they adjust to the fourth down. I think as long as Dan Campbell's there, then they are going to continue to go for it on fourth down. That's just me personally. So Greg Rice says, how many third and fourth downs were tush push? I have no idea, Greg. I don't know. They don't do the tush push, right? In Detroit? Am I thinking right? I don't remember them doing the tush push. But nonetheless, I mean, whether it's a tush push or throwing the ball or whatever the play call is, man, you got to get better. You cannot allow a team to go 7 of 15 on third down and 4 of 5 on fourth down, where you only go 1 of 5 on third down. Man, that's that just can't do it. Expect to win the ball game. They outpassed us in that game too, 280 to 199. Rushing wise, they outran. I mean, they just did everything better. They really did. Although I will say this, their yards per rush was only 3.3. It was just those extra possessions, right? Converting on fourth down, that really was the big difference. So that was the difference in that game, in my opinion. So they were 11 of 15 on third and fourth down conversions, what Deb Fish says. I think that's spot on, man. It's going to be hard to win many ball games. That's how you score 34 points, right? Moving the ball and moving the sticks there on third and fourth down. All right, moving along. Week 17 at the Vikings. The Vikings come out and they win by 2 points in Minnesota. Let's see the turnover. Let's start there. The turnovers was tied 1-1, so that wasn't the difference. We lost a fumble. They threw an interception, so not a huge thing there. Time of possession, they had the ball 11 minutes longer than we did. I guarantee you this is going to be a third down, fourth down conversion thing again, ain't it? Actually, no. We had a better third down efficiency of 8 of 14. They were 6 of 12. So we were slightly above 50%. They were right at the 50% mark. We went for it on fourth down one time and did not get it. So what sticks out here the most, guys, is their total yardage. My goodness, man, 441. They had 6.3 yards per play. We finished at 4.8. Passing yards, they cut us apart at 372 while we only had 167. And their efficiency was off the charts, man. 33 of 43 while we were 19 of 30. Their yards per pass was 8.5. So the story of this game was definitely the passing defense. There's no two ways about that. So definitely struggled with the pass defense on that game there. So let's see what Hugh Mr. Jazz says here in the chat, I agree with you. A tag me says, Clay, I agree with you that cornerback isn't a tier 1 position, but in all caps, with the emphasis teams are putting on passing over the last decade, do you think that's an outdated way of thinking? I think of the Eagles, right? What was their strength this year? They won the Super Bowl. Their strength was running the football, right? You go back to and playing defense, of course. You go back to the Chiefs the year before, and we're just talking most recently. Since you kind of mentioned it's outdated, let's try to think most recently. The Chiefs passed the ball pretty well, but they took a step back that last Super Bowl year. It was their defense that was dominant. They had like a top 2, maybe the best defense in the league. So the commonality between the Eagles and the Chiefs wasn't that they were passing the ball well. It was they both played really good defense, with one having a great running game and the other having a better passing attack. Although Pacheco's a good running back, right? I feel like he's been pretty effective. The year before was the Chiefs as well. Their passing game was a lot better that year, if I remember correctly. So it's kind of like out of the last 3 years, you would say defense, pass. So, yeah. But the Eagles, man, their running game was dominant last year, as I remember. It's a great question there, though, Mr. Jess. I still wouldn't put corner at tier 1 because, again, if you put a cornerback, if you spend all your money on cornerback, and I'm not saying you have to spend all your money to have a tier 1, although once their contract comes due, you got to pay them, right? It's easy for an offense to go away from that corner. We're just not going to throw his way. Now that asset is isolated. But if you've got a really good pass rusher, you guys know how I feel about 3-tech. You got a dominant 3-tech. He affects the running game and the passing game, right? And again, the way to compensate for having a lackluster pass defense, which I don't think the Packers had, although that was the tell of this game here against the Vikings. Horrible pass defense game here. The best way to help your pass defense and your coverage is get pressure in that quarterback's face, right? And there's no better place to get pressure than at the 3-tech. Get you a 1-tech over there in your nickel to try to occupy a double team. And when you go in 3-tech, the whole point of the 3-tech is you playing on the outside shoulder of the guard. It's harder for the center. The center cannot help block if you're rushing the outside shoulder of the guard in that 3-tech. So, yeah, that would be my only, I don't want to say argument, but pushback, I guess, there in that regard, Jess. It all comes down to, like, what would you rather have? Because you can't have everything, right? I would rather have a dominant 3-tech push in the pocket or a dominant edge defender, albeit if you've got a dominant edge defender, they can slide the protection and isolate him. We've seen them do it with Gary from time to time. We know that's what happened. Like T.J. Watt last year was less than 10% pressure rate. He's drawn a bunch of attention. Same thing with Max Crosby. So you have a little bit easier job isolating an edge defender as opposed to a 3-tech. But you can completely isolate a dominant corner if you just don't throw his way. Now you can mold the defense to play in a way that, hey, we're going to force you to throw this way because we're going to bracket cover other guys, right? Like, many people didn't understand what Bill Belichick did with his bullseye defense. He played predominantly man coverage, and rather than put his number 1 corner on their number 1 receiver, what he would do is put his number 1 corner on their number 2 receiver, and then he would take 2 lesser players and double team their number 1. So he's forcing you to go to, rather than you going, okay, we're going to put our best guy on their best guy, and now we think our number 2 receiver is better than their number 2 corner. You've seen the Packers do that under Mike McCarthy all the time. Our receiving core was so deep that our number 2 wide receiver was consistently better than pretty much every team's number 2 corner, right? So if a team played 2-man under, you could cook their number 2 if you had a good enough receiving core, whether it be Randall Cobb or Jordy Nelson early on while Greg Jennings was the number 1, or even James Jones in his prime. Things like that. But what Belichick would do is say, hey, I'm going to put my number 1 corner on their number 2 target. That takes him completely out of the game plan. And we're going to bracket cover their number 2 receiver. That takes him out of the game. So now you got to go to the number 3 receiver. And if you guys remember, when Belichick was in his prime in New England, they came to Green Bay and played the Packers and Mike McCarthy, and Aaron Rodgers cut them up. I specifically remember Jordy Nelson cooking in that game. Because, again, when you've got a receiving core that's 3 and 4 deep, not a whole lot of defense is going to be effective against that, right? Again, players win them and coaches lose them. So week 18 against the Bears, we lost that game by 2 points. Now, I want to mention here, this is probably not a popular take, and I'm sure some people will call it a cop-out. We pulled Jordan Love in that game. You're without Jair, obviously, your number one corner. There was a lot of factors that came into play in that game. You end up pulling you pulled Jordan. Romeo Doubs missed because he was sick, and Christian Watson shredded his knee. So you're down now to your number 3 and 4 wide receiver and your backup quarterback. I toss this game out the window. That's just me personally. They pulled Jordan like, yeah, this ain't even worth it. What are we even doing? They shouldn't have had Christian out there, which that still bothers me to this day, man, that they had Christian Watson out there. So anyway, what else stood out in this game other than that? If we were to say, let's pretend like all the starters were playing, what stood out in this game? Turnover differential was tied 2-2. You notice how we've only, of all these games, the one thing that sticks out, there was only one game that we've hit here that we won the turnover differential. Y'all notice that? So even though a lot of these games are tied, 2-2 or tied 1-1, if you don't throw that one interception, if you don't fumble that one ball, you win the turnover differential by 1, you probably win the game. So that is worth mentioning. I don't want to just completely brush that off just because you tied the turnover differential. You got to protect the football better. That's a common theme that we're seeing here. Penalties, the Bears were actually penalized more, 7 for 45, although we had the same amount of yardage for 45 yards. We only had 5 penalties, so that's kind of a push. I would call that a push for sure. Third down and fourth down efficiency. Here it is again, guys. Once again, third down efficiency. The Bears were 7 of 14, and then they were 1 of 1 on fourth down. We were 3 for 10 and 0 for 1. So we were sitting at 30% third down efficiency, while they were at 50%. They were 100% on fourth down, albeit one try, and we were 0%, just one try. So that's another common theme we're seeing here, is not converting on third down, So that's something to definitely think about as we go into training camp as well. Now, I know a lot of the wide receiver drops came on third down. I remember people specifically talking about that, so that definitely comes into factor as well. But, something to keep our eye on there. So, again, what did we learn? It's multifaceted. And, again, I want to shout out Andy Monday for posing this question. It's multifaceted. Mainly turnover differential. Penalties came into play a little bit. If I had to rate these, I would say it's turnover differential number 1, third down efficiency on both sides of the ball number 2, and then penalties number 3 is how I would kind of rank the most important aspects that played into us going 1-5 in the division. All those things you can control. You can control how aggressive you are with the football, and that's why Jordan's got to get better at that. There's no two ways about it, and we've got to get more efficient on third down. Now, I think another thing that comes into play on third and fourth down, especially third down, I should say, is being too aggressive, throwing the ball down the field, not taking the check down. So some of that is play design, but I think a good chunk of that was Jordan not taking the check down and specifically not getting the check down on time, on schedule. That makes sense. So that's another thing that kind of comes into play for me as well. So hopefully that answered your question there, Andy Monday, and thank you so much for asking. I think that was a great question, and just want to make sure we covered everything. Now let's end it with a couple more questions in here in the Patreon group that we had keyed up. And let's just, we've already hit some of them, so you'll see them already marked with target on them. Let's scroll back up here. This is a long one. I'm going to read it here from Greg. So bear with me. I'm a horrible public reader, but here we go. I'm a few days back on the pods, and I like to a slightly different opinion when looking at some of the odds for this year's Super Bowl. Truthfully, I am not a gambler, so this may not make any sense. All right, we're off to a strong start here. I'm going to read this whole thing, and he prefaced it with, it probably won't make sense. In my head, the odds for the Super Bowl is a combination of how strong the team is and how easy their path to the Super Bowl is. The expected strength of schedule for the NFC West is the easiest in the entire NFL, while the NFC North is the hardest. So talking about, playing NFC West teams as opposed to North teams, I completely agree with that. So the West teams will likely have an inflated record and have a better home field advantage in the playoffs, making their chances to the Super Bowl easier. Although I got to push back a little bit there, Greg. I mean, we've seen our home field advantage, right, in the playoffs the last few times that we've hosted playoff games. I think it's kind of a crapshoot nowadays. It really is. Another interesting odds line that supports this is, quote, to miss the playoffs, the NFC teams is defending order. Number 1, the Eagles plus 290. 2, the 49ers plus 164. Lions are number 3 at plus 156. Rams plus 134. Bucks plus 124. Commanders plus 104. And the Packers minus 115, with the Vikings being minus 128. I think the Packers being minus money is more because of their tough schedule and less of them not being a playoff quality team. This also suggests the Packers' playoff chances really come down to beating the Vikings for the last playoff spot, which is now close to a toss-up. Similarly, as said before, I think the West teams have a higher chance because of their expected easier schedule, rather than them being actually a better team. The last point I have is looking at the team win totals. The expected wins for the NFC North is the Lions 10, Packers 9, Vikings 8, Bears 8. There's an one-game difference between playing at least one playoff home game, being the 7th seed, or missing the playoffs altogether. The margin is so small, and our division games are incredibly important, more so than most years. I think that's all a great point there, Greg, for sure. He said, lastly, I'm on vacation with the family, and my daughter's having trouble sleeping, being away from home. I found that the only thing to put her to sleep is rocking her while listening to this dumb show. So thank you. Hey, appreciate that, man. Appreciate it. That's not the first time. I actually had somebody one time say, man, I turn your podcast on in the car when we're riding around, and it puts my daughter right to sleep. I was like, man, that ain't a good thing. I think he was trying to pay a compliment. I'm like, well, I'm boring as hell, right? You want to put the kids to bed, just turn on the pod. It puts everybody to sleep. We already hit the I agree. Oh, he said, I agree. The strength of schedule is a useless stat, which is why I used expected in the previous message. I was just using strength of schedule as verbiage because that's what the odds suggest. The 49ers have better odds than the Packers to make the playoffs, but the same exact odds to win the Super Bowl. Wouldn't this suggest they have an expected easier schedule? I don't think it's so much that, Greg. I think that the Niners were so banged up last year, they're expecting that team to kind of rise back to where, maybe not exactly where they were, but closer to where they were. I think it has more to do with them being healthy this year, personally. Now, they lost Debo, which Debo's been banged up the last couple of years anyway. He's been somewhat of a locker room problem as well. But I think it's got more to do with that than the strength of schedule. And the strength of schedule stuff, the reason I kind of roll my eyes at that is because every year we talk about this preseason and nobody brings it back up till the end of the year, and they adjust the strength of schedule based off how the teams played throughout the year. It's like, why did we even talk about it in the preseason if we're just going to change it by the end of the year? I don't know. It just never really resonated with me. So Andy Monday said, I know you mentioned it last week, but could you repeat the snap percentage for Rashawn and LVM for the 2024 season, as well as their snap percentage for after the Preston trade? Ryan did that great pod about the improved pass rush pressures. I'm wondering how the Preston trade may have positively impacted that. Could be a classic case of progress stopper. Yeah, and Preston, here's how you know it was a right move moving on from Preston. I don't have the time to go look at the numbers right now. Andy obviously reading on the fly, but you know it was the right move because Preston's a free agent right now. You know, if he was so valuable, a team would have snatched him up. I heard some people saying, why not bring him back in? LVN had a better pressure rate, right? LVN played better. I think people are going to be surprised with LVN this year. And maybe it's just wishful thinking on my part, but I think if he gets his snap percentage up over 50%, maybe right around where Gary is or a little higher, I think what you're going to see happen is you're going to look up and he's going to have 8 or 9 sacks this year. And if he can maintain that 11% pressure rate or increase it to 13%, and you truly press into, hey, let's let Brenton Cox Jr. be that third rotational pass rusher and not feel like we got to throw Kingsley and Igbare out there every chance we get, I think that could help big time. I really do. So we'll see how it all shakes out, but progress stopping is a real thing. I know Bill Parcells talked about it a lot. He's where I heard that phrase coined. You know, the saying a veteran player on the field with someone with higher upside sitting on the bench being younger, that's a progress stopper, and you got to know when to, okay, it's time to turn the page. You get that young guy on the field and let him take off. I think they made that decision there, obviously, at the trade deadline by moving Preston Smith, and I think that the pass rush got better in it. That pod, I wish we could find out what pod that was, because I know exactly what you're talking about, Andy. It was him just pointing out that this pass rush is getting better as the season went on, because it was bad early in the year. And, it wasn't so much diving into the tape early in the year, although there was a little bit of that where you look up and go, yeah, they're not really pinning their ears. But, man, in the second half of the season, they really, really started to put things together. So definitely something to keep in mind there. But next, we already hit those. Greg Rice said, also, since we know Jai is gone, is there any available cornerbacks we can add for depth, or since pressure on quarterback makes it easier on the DBs, could we add an edge, Trey Hendrickson, Zadarius Smith, Jadeveon Clowney, etc.? I think it's right back to the progress stopper comment up top here, Greg. I think that's going in the opposite direction. If you can find me a cornerback on the market that's better than what we got, I'm definitely open ears, man. We've got room on the bottom of the roster, and that doesn't mean you sign somebody to put them on the bottom roster. It means there's room to push people down the roster if you get someone who's significantly better. Carrington Valentine's passer rating when targeted last year was really, really good. Really good. Keyshawn Nixon's was in the hundreds, one of the worst in the league. Now, passer rating when targeted, touchdowns come into factor there. I think Keyshawn gave up 5 touchdowns last year. Carrington, the last I checked, let me double check it if I can do it without too much dead air here. I want to say Carrington didn't give up a single touchdown all year last year. Let me double check that real quick here. Touchdowns allowed. Where are you at, Carrington? Yeah, Carrington Valentine did not give up a touchdown all year long. His passer rating when targeted, according to NFL Pro, with the game tape to match it, 69.0 was his passer rating when targeted. So Carrington did not give up a single point for the Packers last year. To put that into perspective, let's see here. Let's see who led the team, or vice versa. Keyshawn Nixon gave up 6 touchdowns. Javon Bullard gave up 3 touchdowns. Keep in mind, this is in coverage, okay, guys? 6 touchdowns allowed for Keyshawn, 3 for Javon Bullard, 3 for Isaiah McDuffie, 3 for Eric Stokes, 2 for Jair Alexander. People don't talk about that, do they? He gave up 2 touchdowns last year. Eric Wilson, 2 touchdowns. Evan Williams, only 1 touchdown. Corey Ballantyne, 1. Xavier McKinney, 0 touchdowns allowed. And same thing with Carrington Valentine. And Carrington Valentine, again, 2 interceptions. On the season, Xavier McKinney finished with 8 interceptions. Jair and Carrington both had 2. And then Keyshawn Nixon had 1. Zane Anderson had 1. Evan Williams had 1. So, again, there's just another statistic there in terms of Carrington Valentine not allowing a single touchdown all year. So, and, again, that goes into play for the passer rating when targets. Probably one of the most important aspects of that statistic. So, moving along here, Chris N. Terrible news. Take the cap savings and go all in for Bengals Hendrickson now. I think we kind of talked about that. I don't know if you're being serious or not. Listen, if you can get Trey Hendrickson for a year, I wouldn't be opposed to it. But I just have a hard time believing that he's not going to want that contract he's trying to get from the Bengals. That's the part that makes me scratch my head. So, and Chris M went on to say, Clayton, the Packers are up against the cap already for next season, right? Do you think Goot just wants to roll a majority of this $45 million into next year? We kind of talked about that earlier today. I wish I could find out if that includes the rollover for next year, because I don't think it does. I could be wrong. Like when you look at the multi-year salary cap tracker here on Spot Track, it's showing our cap space this year, $45.4 million. Let's see if 2026 adds a rollover. It does not show a rollover. That doesn't mean, though, that there's not a rollover. And the estimated cap next year is set at $307 million. Obviously, it increases every year. So if we go to our cap situation right now, let me just take a quick peek and see if I can find – we know what the rollover is going to be as it sits right now, but I just don't know if they're factoring that in or not at the moment. Because that'd be really good information if we can figure out if that's the case. Actually, this might be the page to do it. Exempt, permission list, rollover. Okay, so the 2024 rollover was $15.1 million. That is factored into the adjusted salary cap for this year, for 2025. Let me click on 26 to see if they got the same thing, because I really would like to know that. That's going to answer your question a little more detailed there. So it's showing 2025 rollover cap at 11.8 right now, 11.8 million. So, yeah, that doesn't include that then, right? Because if it was the true rollover cap from this year, I imagine that rollover cap was probably preset from the years before as well. That's interesting. It might be one of those things too. But let's look at the total salary that we have, or total cap that's eat up here. The total cap for us next year is $288.9 million. Okay, that's the cap that we've already got tied up. And again, the projected cap, remember that number for me, 288, and the projected salary cap is 307. So yeah, that does not include the rollover then. So yeah, I think we're right there, Chris. I think you're going to take that $29 million and tack on the 45 too. So we're even in a better spot, than we thought. Now, again, I'm not one of these fans that's like, yeah, our cap situation looks great. Put the best team on the field. That's why I was okay with keeping Ja, although I'm not like torn over it. Chris Coleman with the super chat. Thank you, buddy. Can you compare Hobbs' tackle rate to Ja's? Boy, that'd get ugly quick. Tackle rate is kind of tough. We'd have to try to find an analytic that shows missed tackle percentage. And when you try to do this type of search through AI, you can't trust it, guys. It's compiling a bunch of different articles and all this information, and you'll find the numbers are almost always incorrect with AI. PFF grade probably be the closest thing we would have. Nate Hobbs last year, if I can get this to pull up, I'll get his PFF has been struggling all day long too, so it's probably not going to load. I know he had a better tackle grade, and you might just be being a little sarcastic there, Chris. I don't know, but Hobbs, one of Hobbs' strength in his game is tackling, and he's been fairly durable too. I think Wildy talked about the number there. In the last 4 years, Jair has played 30-some games, and I think Hobbs in the last 4 years has played in over 50. So he's definitely been healthier, albeit he is a little bit younger. But I do feel very confident saying that Hobbs is a much better tackler. There's no two ways about that. So here's the premium stats for Hobbs last year. His tackle grades, reading them off week by week, 78.2, 72.8, 56, 30, 30, 33, 82, 80, 28, 26, and 77. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks of the 17 weeks. And keep in mind, he missed time between 10 weeks. He didn't play in week 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, or 16, and there's a bye week in there somewhere. So he missed something like 5 games, I want to say, last year. But yeah, his tackle grade is significantly better than Ja's. I don't have Ja's pulled up, but I actually had it in that article we were hitting on. So let me drop this down. Again, thanks to everybody with the Patreon questions. You guys and gals are absolutely awesome. Let me see. Just hop back to the Patreon article real quick, and I won't pull it up on the screen, but we can compare Jaws real fast. I got to get out of here. I'm way over. Wife been gone for darn near a week. She's wondering why I'm still acting like she's out of town. Let's see here. There's the article. That is not the article. We'll just get us a quick little glance at this on our coverage. And again, you guys have access to all this over on Patreon. Jair's tackle grade last year, 45, 75, 70, 45, 75, 70, 29, 77, 24. So you had 3 games in there where it was above 70. That's, I got to be honest with you, that's a little bit better than I expected, But when you turn on the tape, and again, this is just blindly going off of PFF. When you turn on the tape, if you get a chance, go watch some Nate Hobbs tape. He plays very physical. I see that and I get excited, but I also see that and go, crap. Can he stay healthy? Hopefully he stays healthy, because that's the thing that got Ja. Ja used to be kind of physical tackling, before Najee Harris ran through his face and hurt that shoulder, right? So, yeah, maybe we can do a little deep dive on that tomorrow, Chris, and get a little bit better answer for you. But I feel very confident and comfortable saying that Nate Hobbs is significantly more aggressive and more efficient tackler than Jair is. You probably need to try to find a missed tackle rate, and those are kind of hard to find with cornerbacks when looking at analytics. Thank you for the super chat, bud. Appreciate you. All right, we're out of here, guys. Thank y'all so much for hanging out with us. Hopefully we covered enough for y'all tonight. A lot of information came down the pike. So I thought, you know what, let's just try to dive into it all. Tomorrow we got mandatory minicamp. I don't know when the media is meeting with them. Hopefully we get a little more added coverage of everything here coming up tomorrow. So, yeah, appreciate everybody in the chat. You guys were awesome in here tonight, man. It was lit up. We had a huge crowd too. Thank y'all so much for making us a part of your evening. Also want to give a quick plug for our giveaway here. If you guys want an opportunity to win an awesome piece of memorabilia, autographed Dorsey Levens jersey, and you want to donate to a good cause while doing so, just go over to my Twitter account at Packers_access. You'll see a link. The tweet will be pinned at the top of the page. You'll see a link there, givebutter.com/KRPSJ5. For every $5 you donate to our good friends over at My Autism Connection, you will be entered into the contest one time. For every $5 you donate, we'll put everybody's name on the wheel, spin that sucker, and give away that autographed jersey to one special person that took the time and funds to donate to an absolutely awesome cause. Again, that's My Autism Connection, building hope, community, and independence for autistic adults. Also, this week, Saturday, we're going to be doing a giveaway, another autograph card. This one's pretty sweet. It's a Romeo Doubs autograph card, okay? And that was donated by our good friend Rick Kruger. So anybody who's a member of the $3 tier in our Patreon group, again, all that stuff we just covered, you get early access to all that in our Patreon group. Anybody who's a member of the $3 tier, patreon.com/PackerFan Total Access, just the $3 tier. You don't have to go the 5 or the 10. That's just there if you want to be an extra blessing and give to the show. But you're a member of the $3 tier, you're going to be entered into the contest. We're going to put everybody's name from that on the wheel Saturday, spin that sucker, and give away that autographed Romeo Doubs card. Still waiting to hear back from Paul Grant, who won the autographed Kingsley Enagbare card from last week. Mountain Man Pack was second. He already came forward, so if we don't hear from Paul Grant, it'll go to Mountain Man Pack. So Paul Grant, if you hear my voice, shoot me a DM, buddy. I DM'd you on Patreon, but make sure you reach out. We'll give it till like Friday. If we don't hear from you, then we'll go ahead and give it to Mountain Man Pack. So everybody, thank y'all so much for hanging out with us. Hit that like button, hit subscribe. Feel free to, like I said, turn the notifications on and all that good stuff. Bates with the super chat. Thank you, Clay, for flying solo recently. We appreciate it. Go Pack. Hey, my pleasure, Bates. Appreciate you guys, man. I know y'all are always in here thanking me for the content and everything, but I want to thank y'all because it's this show would suck if we didn't have the chat and didn't have the interaction and didn't have all the listeners reaching out through the Patreon community and on Twitter and everything else. Y'all make this show go, and really appreciate the super chat, everybody. We'll see y'all tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Central Time for PTA Live. As always, let's go out and be the change we want to see in the world. Go.
Here we go.
Bye, guys.